But people have questioned why, given that you can watch these things in your own time, you can rewind, why do we have these submission deadlines? Work has to be in by 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time for a certain day and so forth. Well, two reasons. One is some of it's going to be machine graded, and the machine has to know when to run the algorithm, and so we do have to make sure it's in. That's the sort of logistic reason why there's a deadline. The other deadline is we want to give students. There has to be a time when we can force as many students as possible to come on the forums, to come together, to talk about it. And the best known method in education is give people a deadline.
Right.
Because in fact, Coursera, you can look at the graphs on the Coursera website, the administrative site, and you can tell where the deadlines for submission are because the level of activity goes through the roof and then it drops off. They do what everybody does. 2 hours before the exam deadline or the course, the assignment deadline, everyone wants to do it and the activity goes up. So we make sure, we engineer that at least once or twice a week, people come together and discuss it. And they organise their schedule around that. And that's very valuable because, as I've said, to me, it's really about bringing people together to learn from each other, not to learn from me. Bring them together to learn from each other.
Yeah, and Udacity has moved to, in that initial version, they were using kind of a cohort model where there were a bunch of people taking the course at once. They've moved to a more open, like you can do it whenever you want. And there are reasons to prefer that. There are advantages to doing it that way. I think one of the reasons Coursera and we like to stick with the cohort model is because there is this really strong social element of learning. And by having people going through, if you and 20,000 people are going through the course at the same time as each other, you're providing opportunities for for dialogue outside of the lectures and even outside of the forums we've talked a little bit about. We had people creating Google Hangout groups and things like that as well.
It seems like that would add to the sense of discipline around it, personal discipline around it, because as you were saying, deadlines, if you know that the groups are going to be talking at a certain time, if you've got a Skype call set up to discuss the content, it's just going to have that little extra nudge to stay up with everybody.
Yeah, and actually a really interesting model there's another MOOC platform out of Stanford called Venture Lab that's recently been created, and they're using a kind of a team creation algorithm at the front end of their courses. So they have like a creativity course, and it groups people into little teams. And what they found was in their first week they had the same drop off where 80% of people or whatever just signed up for the course and then they didn't stay around. But what they found was really interesting was over the last 7-8 weeks of their course, they had almost no drop-off at all, which is amazing when you think of the way that most MOOCs work, which is kind of a steady drop-off after the first week. But it's because these people had been put into teams that after they'd been committed for the first week, once they'd participated in one assignment, they weren't going to abandon their team at that point.